I made a vow to myself, I will never code switch again. I will never assimilate into anybody else's space. If you're going to take me exactly as I am, and I will make improvements on myself because I want to make improvements on myself. But I will not be me shrinking or me, trying to adjust for people who don't like the whole me or whatever I'm bringing to the table at that point. And once I did that, the world opened up and I never looked back. And I said, you know what? Everybody should feel like this. Like, this is freedom. This is real freedom, right? This is real wealth.
This is Pay Me in Plane Tickets. Where do you hail from?
I am from Philadelphia, North Philadelphia, to be more specific, born and raised.
Wonderful. And did you grow up there your whole life, or did you spend some time in other different parts of maybe the nation?
I went to college at Penn State at
Okay.
University Park. After that, I went back to Philly for a few years, and that's when I started my wine journey. And once I got my certifications, I moved to Miami for, I think it was like 7 years I was in Miami, and I am currently living in Atlanta.
So during those growing years, did you do any solo travel, any particular like traveling abroad, maybe in university or no?
Um, so my first time getting on a plane, I was in college, and I went with some friends of mine to Minnesota, of all places, for Christmas. And that's really funny because I absolutely despise being cold. It is the worst thing. Like, there are so many other things that I'd rather pluck my eyebrows, and my eyelashes than to sit in a cold space. The first time I went international with a boyfriend after college, and the first time I took like a solo trip was to Europe actually for about a month. So when I went to Europe, I went to Germany, I was in Barcelona, and I was in different parts of England. So I was in like the countryside of England, and then I was also in London.
Yeah.
That was really transformative for me because um, that is when I realized like wine was food, and people in other places they treat it like that and not so much
Mm.
the way it's kind of viewed here as like this luxury. No matter how much the wine costs, it's a luxury. And it's just like, oh, okay. Um, so that was like when I really started like digging my heels into travel and understanding like the importance of it, and just how it opens your mind so much. I had traveled a couple places before I went to Europe, but that was my first European trip, and it was by myself.
First European trip, first trip by yourself, first time sort of solo as well. I know you were part of the sommelier sort of process, but it was still kind of you alone figuring this whole thing out, being in a new
Yeah.
environment. When you travel to places like Italy and France, they grow up with wine. It's nothing to them. It's
Hmm.
almost like juice. They're like, yeah, what's the big deal? Like, I've had this since I was like 8 years old, or, you know, like, well, why are you guys making this such a big deal?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And like I said, I come from North Philadelphia. We're not exactly growing up and drinking wine.
Right. You got a
Like,
vineyard next to you.
more so like dodging bullets or, trying to get to school safely or, like stuff like that. So like, we have other concerns. We have other things we're concerned about. But I love about Philly though, it's like it feels like a small town when you grow up in like these hoods,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
But it's also like a lot of love there. Like, yeah, there's a lot of like things that, are indescribable and not great, but there's also a lot of love in like these small communities, and that also shapes you and it helps you when you're traveling and stuff like that. Because I remember going on this trip, and this was in Mexico, and I've been to Mexico so many times. I've been all over Mexico. Like, they probably have posters of me in Mexico. Um, and I just remember this lady like fussing at one of the servers or something and like speak English. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, how are you in their country telling them
Right.
to speak? Like, the sense of entitlement, just I don't know where that comes from, but I feel like growing up in a community kind of like helps to shape certain things. And it just
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a correlation there, but I definitely would have never said that to somebody, right? Like
Oh,
it's
no,
just,
it's also yeah, completely. I'm with you. I don't like when I see that, especially when I'm in other countries. Like when I'm in Mexico, I'm not that good at Spanish, but I do, try my best. But I never would ever think to say that to somebody while I'm in Mexico. Not a
demand. Like you're
exactly.
demanding. And but also like you think these people are beneath you. And so I guess that's the correlation for me, right? I don't think that people are beneath me, right? Because you grow up in those environments, you don't think people. And so it also creates this sense of wonder. Like when you break out of there, when you're out of that space and you're traveling, everything is a wonder because it's such a small space and your whole life people are feeding you the ideas of what your limitations are in these spaces. And when you get on a plane, the world opens up and it's just this other thing. And, it's the first trip is maybe domestic. Maybe it's, to Miami or something like that. But little by little, it just continues to open up your soul in a lot of ways. And so, like, no, I wouldn't have chosen, like, if I could choose to grow up in North Philadelphia. But I do think that it creates a grounding and a level of like gratitude and appreciation that you just live with, especially when you start traveling. I think it creates another layer of the experience.
No, 100% agree. There's an appreciation for the small things, especially when you're in those growing years in those neighborhoods. Uh,
Hmm.
there's some
Yes.
humbling in there, and I want to now jump into before we get to the bigger, grander things you've been able to accomplish. You took this massive leap of faith from North Philly to Miami,
Hmm.
where I guess
Yeah.
you got out of the North Rush, and now you went down to the sunny state. Where did that all come from?
Um, I think that I've always just been kind of fearless in the sense of like there's a deep part of me that knows that I'm always going to be okay. I'm always going to land on my feet. I'm always going to figure it out. And so I also get, and I wouldn't say bored, but I also know when my time is up somewhere. Like I know when I've done all that I could do. And in Philadelphia, I didn't see any growth for me. And I'm consistently chasing the next version of myself, like the better version of myself, the highest version of myself. And I didn't see that happening with my wine career in Philadelphia. I looked around, um, and not for nothing, Philadelphia is an incredible space for hospitality. Taught me everything I know about being hospitable, not even just like the North Philly thing, but just the restaurants there. Food is very authentic. There's lots of different kinds of food. And so I don't dismiss that, but the wine programs seemed a little bit more alienated to me at that time. And, we're talking about 2011 when I moved, right? So, it was a long time ago. And the wine world was very different. And I just had freedom. And I've always had like this freedom in my head. I still have it, and I'd pick up and take my child because I'm out. If I'm out, I'm out. But I woke up one morning and I finished my certification and I was like, well, there's nothing else here to do. Flipped a coin and I was like, so you're either going to go to California, or you're going to go to Miami. Miami won the coin toss. 2 weeks later, I didn't have, I really had freedom. Like I was free as a bird. I didn't have an apartment lease or, there was nothing holding me there, no car, no nothing. And I was like, all right, well, I packed up 2 weeks later, moved to Miami. No, nowhere to live, no apartment,
Wow.
no nothing. I transferred in my job. At the time when I was studying, I was working as a hostess, and they were able to transfer me in the same company to, I became a cocktail server, which is a whole nother story. um, and I was just determined. I just had this level of determination, like I'm still like that. Like when I'm saying I'm going to do something, I do it, and sometimes I have to stop and look like. look back and like, oh, you actually did do everything you said you were going to do. But when I'm like, my sights are set on something, I'm on it. Like I'm gone. And so I stayed in a hotel for a few days, and I don't think maybe it's like a week or so.
Yeah.
And I found an apartment. It was a really nice apartment too. It ended up being really nice. And it was in, what's now Wynwood. It's across the street from what's now Wynwood, which is crazy because then Wynwood wasn't, the artsy thing.
Right.
It was just like coming up then. Um, and that was it. And then I had this thing where I was like, you're going to be a Som, right? I also was very determined to be the first Black woman to be a master Som. And so at that point, nothing was getting in the way of that. Like I was chasing this full speed. And I just felt like Miami was the easiest place for me to try and develop my career. At the time, I didn't know there weren't any other Black people in the wine scene down there. So that wasn't a part of it. And it took like recent years for me to like actually think like, oh, I think for a long time you're the only Black person, in the wine scene down there. And then being a woman was another layer, right? But I just I just don't feel the fear of like being I'm more scared of being pigeonholed into a space, and like suffocating than to try something and fail. Like I'm gonna try it. It will work out the way it's supposed to work out. I might have to take the long way. I might have to take the stairs, but I'm gonna get up there. I'm gonna figure it out. And I just always know that.
Right. You had that yes attitude, that I will attitude. Just kind of go for it and it will figure itself out.
Yeah. And the path that I'm taking might be a little detour, but I'm gonna always end up where I'm supposed to be. I never said I wasn't scared. I said I'm not afraid to do it scared. Terrifying. Like, it was something that like even trying to enter into that space was terrifying because I didn't know any other Black people. I didn't know any other Black women, and that's not to say that they didn't exist. I just didn't know they existed. And Instagram at the time wasn't like connecting that way with people. And so it was that was a jarring experience for a long time. The move to Miami, wow, I love the weather and I was very happy to be out of the cold, never having to deal with that again.
Right.
Um I love the water, I love the sights, all that thing. Miami is another animal. Like Miami is not for the weak. And if I didn't have a sense of who I was when I got there, it would have destroyed me, like it does a lot of people. Like Miami, living in Miami and visiting Miami is two different things.
Oh no,
It's not for the weak at all. Because, like Miami's very drug heavy, right? And so they
party.
don't have a problem. There's is no like, we're from the north. It's a cliche. Like, you do drugs? Oh my God. Like, it's a secret. Down there, they're handing you drugs just regularly. Like, here you go. And I'm just like, no, I don't want this. I don't want to do
Yeah.
this. Like, I don't mind drinking, but I'm not doing drugs. And that's nothing against people who do, but the way that it's rolled out, it's such a common thing. Like, this is how people get addicted. This is how it becomes a very easy part of your life. And so I just never people would be up for 24 hours just going, going, going because they were taking all kinds of drugs and stuff like that. I couldn't roll like that. I was like, this is not, I was so culture shocked when I moved down there because again, there's that community in Philadelphia, like everything is a community kind of thing. You have your row homes and people take care of each other and all. Miami is literally every man for himself. Like, every man's for himself. People look you dead in your face and your eyes and lie to you. And then, like they'll say something and then go right next to you and say something else. Like it was just so jarring. I literally had one foot in and one foot. I thought I made a mistake. I had one foot in and one foot out for probably 6 months.
Wow.
And to the point where I never even bought furniture. All I had was a bed
Yeah.
and a little desk that I used to do my studies on. That was it. I was like, I'm not getting no furniture here because I'm leaving. Like, I tried it. I'm going back. I'm going somewhere else. I might have to stop back home for a second, but this is not working out the way that I thought it would. And so it was definitely emotionally taxing for me because I didn't know anybody. And I was going through something that nobody else that I knew understood. Like this wine thing, there was nobody that I could talk to that would be able to relate to me, um, talk me through it, talk me through the difficulties, help me with my accent and my pronunciations, like none of that stuff. And no one understood the mental and emotional, toll that it takes on you when you're kind of like trying to break into a space that doesn't want you.
Yeah.
Like very adamant about not wanting you. Like I remember when I got to Miami, he would be like, "Who is this black girl with the mohawk and the tattoos?" And I would be in wine tastings, just jolly la la la, walking around in wine tastings, and I at first I didn't think anything of it, but then you start picking up on the nuances, right? Like, um, and they didn't, um, some people wouldn't serve me. Some people would um pull out like another like you have like two different kinds of wines on the table. One's a high end, one's a entry level. They would pour the entry level for me, and then you can see them switch and pour the next one for the next person. And um, it was hard, and people were not used to seeing a black woman in the wine space. They thought it was a fluke. They were like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" Not only what are you doing here, you have tattoos and you're showing them, and you you have a mohawk. Like you don't look like you even belong here. And I was like, okay, but I do, and I'm really smart, and I know my shit. So you can't stop me. Like you can't not make me be here. And I know that you just poured me prosecco, fucker. Like instead,
Mhm.
it's just like stuff like that used to piss me off.
Right.
Um,
All
but
while you're in this whole new environment, still trying
yeah.
to sort of like manage through all that.
No, yeah, that was definitely difficult. And trying to find myself, right? Because I was still in my 20s.
Right.
And, regardless of what the world tells you, you don't know who you are until you're in like your mid 30s. Like you have to figure all of that stuff out. I had enough baseline to know that I didn't want what I didn't want for my life. And, I wasn't easily manipulated in like into taking drugs and all of that kind of stuff. Like I know what a no is, but I also was still trying to figure out who I was. This is my first time moving out of state like that. Going to college is a little different than
Yeah.
moving to another state, like, and then randomly moving to another state. So it was a lot. I was trying to figure out who I was as a person. I was trying to figure out who I was in this career path that I was trying to manage, and then just where was I going with this? Like I knew where I wanted to go, but there's also the story about how things came crashing down shortly after I arrived in Miami. And like I had to change the trajectory of my career in a very traumatizing way. And there we are again, and I'm still working as a cocktail server. So it's a lot. Like the pieces, like I said, it's not for the weak. And you don't wake up every day like I'm so strong, but you got to think about it like, well, goddamn.
Yeah, to hear everything that you just described, it is not for the weak, as you mentioned, but it's also you have to be like mentally strong in these sort of niche desires as becoming a sommelier, or a som to say sure. Trying to be in the cool kids club a little bit, but it's a very mentally taxing decision to go that route and
Mhm.
to do that while you're in Miami filled with tons of distractions. I'm one to know myself enough. I like to visit Miami for a few days and leave, but I will not even if it was a
Yeah.
free apartment. Maybe it was super free, maybe I would, but I would definitely question it at that point. Well, first, before I get to that, how long were you in Miami for? How
I
many?
was in Miami from 2011 and I moved in 2017. Yes, I moved in 2000 because I had my daughter in 2016. So that was my move. That's why I moved. Like, was not raising her there.
Get out
So
of there,
it's
pretty much.
gone. So yeah, I moved in 2017.
You completed your exams and your tests while in Miami.
No, I did that. So the thing about that part of the story is back when I was taking those exams and tests, there was this indoctrination that there was only one test that made you a som.
Hmm.
It's not like that now,
Okay.
but there was a test that, everybody took. They indoctrinate you into this space where they make you feel like it doesn't matter what other certifications you have, none of those count. This
Oh,
is the only thing that matters. And so I was chasing that, right? I was very much chasing that until, I had a really bad experience with it. But I had already had an advanced certification from the Wine School of Philadelphia. And I
okay.
never even thought about it or considered it as a badge or any of the rest of that stuff. I was like, all right, well, I got that. I just got that to get my feet wet versus I'm chasing a thing from a different organization. So that's
Um,
basically how that goes. And so when I was in Miami, I was traveling. I traveled to New York on my own dime and all of that to go and take this, the first level of the certification. It's 4 levels. And so ended up doing that. Didn't go well. There was some racial connotations
talking
there.
about the Court of
And
Master Sommeliers,
yeah, yeah,
that whole.
that whole thing. That whole thing, where, they were trying to force me to do something that I was not okay with. And then, that's an easy Google if you want to find the story on that. It went viral. We don't have to rehash it, but I had to, kind of switch it up from there because I couldn't go down that path any longer, for the sake of my own humanity. And I basically was like, all right, well, you got to forge your own shit. Like,
And to kind of describe it for the community, the Court of Master Sommeliers, they were at the time kind of like the gatekeepers.
yeah, yeah.
So
They
you
were
have
the top of the top.
they were the they were the top of the food chain, the apex predator.
Yeah.
So for you to just sort of detract from it was almost another massive detour on
Oh, yeah.
the vision, right?
Yeah. And I was terrified about that for years. I was like, no matter how many accolades I got, I always shrunk because I was terrified that people were going to find out that I didn't finish. Like I got the first level of certification. I passed the test when I went. I just never continued on to the next levels because I just didn't feel like that was my path anymore. They, the way they ran an organization, I just wasn't okay with. Um, and so again, I already have certifications. I'm just trying to get this one because this was the gold mine. This is what it felt like at the time. It's not like that so much anymore, but definitely that was everybody was chasing this particular certification. And so when I had to, kind of regroup, I was terrified. And I mean, I'd never been so scared in my life because I was just like, somebody's gonna find me out. I'm a fraud. I'm blah blah. Now, mind you, I have an advanced certification. I'm a fraud because I didn't get this certification that you kind of like you get indoctrinated into if you don't have this and you're not a som. I was an excellent som. I was actually really good at my job. Like incredible even because I know my shit very well to this day, but I always counted myself out. I was in magazines, when I started my career at the St. Regis. I opened the St. Regis, right? This is my first som job.
It's beautiful.
That's
Yeah, that's
the
a great,
highest level that you can
yeah,
probably
great
start a som.
hospitality brand to be a part of.
Right. Like literally like the highest that you could start a job. But I was still terrified all the time. Like somebody's gonna find me out because I'm not good enough because I didn't complete these levels of certification, right? I only have one. I didn't get all three. And so I always felt like there's this imposter syndrome that was just like looming over me all the time because I was like, oh, it's just like I had gotten it was like my first 2 years as a som, and right when I was just leaving the St. Regis, and I had gotten an article, it was top 5 female soms in South Florida, and I was one of them.
Wow.
And I still didn't believe that I was, like I
Yeah.
knew I was good at my job, but it was still just kind of just like, well, it was just still this fear in the back of my head, like somebody's going to find you out, like, that kind of thing. So that was, that was another mental battle on top of, the consistent everyday trauma that I was dealing with at work, with people who, again, were not used to seeing a Black person or a Black woman on the floor. And so they rejected it. They would send me
Really?
away from tables, all kinds of comments, all kinds of like nonsense. Being at the St. Regis was an incredible career path. I learned a lot, especially about like vintage wines and fine wines. Like I couldn't have had a better education. At the same time, I was being traumatized every single day, right? And
The crowd of the St. Regis is a very different crowd. Yeah.
it's very European too. And it's a lot of money, a lot of money, a lot
Wow.
like, and money rules. And back then, people were even less protective of their employees if a guest was high profile or had money than they are, today. Today you'll get called out on it or something like that. It's not to say it still doesn't happen, but then they didn't care. They
Yeah, no. Yeah.
you gotta go do this dance, or you better get away from this table. He said he didn't want you there, or just like he said, what? Oh, you'll be okay. Like.
Yeah.
And so, I just got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. And again, I wasn't seeing anybody who looked like me. So there was no outlet for me to explain these to even get these things off of my chest or to I didn't feel like it was the loneliest time of my life. I didn't feel like anybody understood me.
Yeah.
And so like really understood me. And so, I had become a different like version of myself. I had become this like kind of shell of myself. And I allowed myself to become that because I was in survival mode. And so outwardly, I looked like I was having a great time and I was doing all of these things. And, I had this great career and all of that stuff. And all those things were true. And I was dying a little bit inside every single day because I wasn't myself. I wasn't allowed to be myself. I didn't recognize myself. Um, and it was just consistently taking a toll. So eventually I had decided I wasn't working for anybody else. I was always a terrible employee anyway, because you could only tell me what to do, but so much. And if I think that, what you're doing is not okay, I'm very much going to say that. So at some point, I left the St. Regis and I went to Michael's Genuine and I left there and I went to another place, which, turned out to be the pit of hell. And I was just like, I'm done. I'm done using my talents. I'm taking my talents back to my community where they belong. When I started this journey, that was the whole point. It was like I didn't see Black people doing this, so I'm going to do it, and I can see the value in it. So I'm going to learn everything that I can and take it back to my community. And so I kind of just got back on that path.
Yeah.
And when I was chasing that CMS certification, the point of me chasing that was because I wanted to be the first Black woman. I wanted that power so that I could create that space. And then when I realized all the power that I needed was already in me, oh, that was it. I made a vow to myself, I will never code switch again. I will never assimilate into anybody else's space. If you're going to take me exactly as I am, and I will make improvements on myself because I want to make improvements on myself. I can read a room and I know how to show up, but I will not be me shrinking or me, trying to adjust for people who don't like the whole me or
Wow.
whatever I'm bringing to the table at that point. And once I did that, the world opened up and I never looked back. And I said, you know what? Everybody should feel like this. Like this is freedom. This is real freedom, right? This is real wealth.
Amen.
I want everybody to feel like this. And then that's when I started, my organizations because I was like, I want to create a space where if everybody doesn't have the luxury that I do to be able to, you know, show up that way. They don't, right? Sometimes you have to play the game. I had to play the game for years too. And I know what that does to you. And so I said, you know what? Even if you got to go do this for 8, 10 hours, 12 hours a day, at least you will have a space and outlet where you can let loose. Like you can get all of these things. You can be yourself. You can still enjoy what you love and be yourself. And so I knew how to get Black people into wine. We didn't see ourselves. But if you create an authentic path, we'll all show up.
Wow. And you're 100% right. So basically, all of so for a while you weren't feeling like your true self. You definitely were feeling
Mm,
afflicted because of everything that's been going on, not seeing yourself in this environment, and feeling that way through many different chapters of your life, feeling that way through many different sort of stages that you've been going through. And it wasn't until sort of you got to this kind of like this pivot where you said, all right, you know what? I'm not gonna follow the same traditional path anymore. I'm gonna, harness my own power, start my own organization, kind of, or capture it in this new organization, which is what I'm leading to, the building of the Hue Society here.
mm.
What was sort of the first step after you realized, hey, I can do this better than all these fairly, established organizations, and I can do it where in a way where I'm giving back to the community and I'm offering a sort of like a different hue in your ocean view, they don't see many
I
of
see what
us
you did
around.
there.
It's a surf slang, yeah, it's a different hue in your ocean view. But give us kind of the early days of starting the Hue Society, which is a wine society for pretty much all people, but it really hones in on
It's Black centered.
yeah.
Um, so 2015, I was done. I became an entrepreneur. Another absolutely terrifying because I had no skills there. I didn't even believe I could be an entrepreneur. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna try it. Here we go again. Like I had zero because I had no one to look to kind of guide me through this. I didn't have like a mentor or any of these things. But what I knew was I know Black people. I know us. I know what we like. I know our community, and I knew what we needed to get into this space. And so I was like, all right, my first organization was actually called Sipping Socials. And this is while I was still in Miami. And I was like, let me try some stuff out. Like I think I know how to do this. If I can do it through our lens, through our cultural lens, where we see our music and our food, and we don't have to kind of change. We don't have to code switch. We just have to show up. All right, let me see this. So I put on an event. It was called the Wine and Reggae Festival. Massive event. 3,000 people showed up.
Wow.
2,000 more than I had planned for or had space for. So that was I got cussed out a lot that week. A lot. Um,
Good trouble, as they say.
but right. And I could have quit because that was also very, traumatizing having all of those people be pissed off with you at the same time. It's like very like my nervous system was a wreck. um, but once I took some time, I calmed down. I was like, all right, that was a shit show, but it works. And you got it and you know what you're doing. And so um the point with Spit Socials was to put wine on a level where it was just social, right? And through our culture. And so I did that and we ended up doing it again. And then I got pregnant and that was the turning point for Miami for me. I was like, yeah, this gig's up. Not raising any kids in this in this town. It's nice, it's pretty, but no, we're gonna jump out of here. And also I had a very traumatic pregnancy, like the person who I was with put me through a lot while I was pregnant. So I just needed to get away from that entire environment. And I was like, all right, well, where's the next place that has the most Black people? Because this concept works. So why don't you just expand it? Like let's figure this out, right? Like you're building this community. People actually are looking to you. Let's create a space. I wanted to create a space, and virtually is what it was initially, where people could that felt like home. And so I started with like Instagram. So that's when an Instagram page came. And when I moved to Atlanta, I was like, all right, this is the Black Mecca. This is where all the Black people are.
Hollywood.
I can make this a home base and expand. And so I was trying to figure out a name. Like, what do you like? You want this to feel like home. You want it to feel like, open and all of these things. And so I'm a huge Jay-Z fan. Huge. Like Hove is, and not even just like his lyrics, his music, but like just like his business stuff and all
Also,
of that. And so this is when 444 was out.
okay.
And I was listening to it, and and it was like was better than one billionaire too, especially if the same hue as you. And I was
Oh,
this is exactly what I'm trying to do. It's like create more space, create more wealth, create more whatever, whatever, and like more of us. And that line just like my soul just lifted. I was like, this is it. And it's a double entendre, right? Because it's not just the hues of us, our skin color, right? It's also hues of wine, different colors of wine. Like, so this is perfect. I'm going to create a society within society. Another Jay-Z reference.
there you go.
And so that's where the Hue Society came from. And, it started virtually a lot of advocating for Black brands and amplifying them, while also trying to gather Black consumers and make people want to get into wine and think about it from a different perspective and see themselves in it in a natural state. And so, I was just posting things like Black women with long nails holding wine glasses. Shit you've never seen before.
Right.
Like,
Never see that on regular, like, boom.
right. Just like, oh, well, that actually, I was trying to normalize just so many things, and eventually it caught fire. And so I ended up, and then my traveling started. And, it's my daughter has been traveling with me since she was 10 weeks old. Like, I travel a lot, a lot, a lot. Because not only just like across the country, but at this point, I'm building global communities with the Hue Society. And it just tells you like that it is necessary. Like people need it, not even just in a sense of like, oh, they need wine. It's like the Hue Society is not really about wine. Wine just happened to be a vehicle that I was good at. The point is that it's a community. And whether you are a wine novice or you're an expert, it's a connector. You can have wine with anything. We have doctors and lawyers that are a part of the Hue Society and, in the different chapters. We have chapters across the state. We have 2 international chapters now. We're going to do more international chapters. And the whole point is you don't have to be anything but yourself. Like you just have to be authentic. And I think that there are very few spaces where we're allowed to do that.
Very true, especially within wine culture.
Yo,
Yeah.
there's no other space in wine culture I can tell
But
you where you are allowed to do that for sure and drink fine wine or drink everyday wines. Like there's no like overlying thing. The only overlapping thing is like joy and authenticity, right? That's it. That's all I want for people.
wow. Yeah, pretty much wine was the cover to sell the book of pretty much connecting in culture and community for you.
Yeah.
Way to look at it.
And again, to be fair, you're looking at a multi-billion dollar industry that, I was looking at the socioeconomics of it as well. We are completely shut out of it. And so
Yeah,
you got billions and billions of dollars. I'm like, well, why we ain't got none of this? Like, why we not a part? Why we ain't got no stake in this? Like, and we're brilliant. And I know for a fact, for a fact, and anybody else knows for a fact, once we put our minds into something, regardless of what that field is, we dominate it. Once
right.
we get our handle in it, we dominate it and then we make it our own. And it's such a beautiful thing to see and experience. Like being Black is incomparable. Like
It's
the
cool.
way we are able to transmute
Mhm.
should be studied.
No, it really it's the coolest thing ever, as I always tell people. I
Yeah.
love it. I will never change it for the world. No matter anything, I love it.
No,
And
not ever. I wouldn't.
they say what the moment you decide to become an entrepreneur, you start your life over. So you're back at 1 years old. So most and we know your why. Uh, I want to know or talk about like how do you manage it all? How have you matured this business and going through kind of the peaks and valleys of the Hue Society, opening
Mhm.
up different chapters, still trying to keep in tune with everything so that it never is overwhelming, especially as a Black female entrepreneur where, oh man, I missed this little spot, but I fixed it up here and I caught up to it. There's a lot that's going on as you're building this enterprise in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Starting over. Wow. I mean, so I had to start my life completely over from scratch, period. So I had this newborn, was I've been a solo parent since she was born. Um, I moved, I was started this business. And there was a point where I was like, I wasn't sure I was going to make it because I had all of these like huge life decisions and changes that were just compounding on me. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Actually, I just realized that.
Pressure's getting a lot.
I
That's what
see a
you get.
pattern here. It's just like I just get some easy lessons. Like, do you have to like zoom in on me like this all the time? Universe, thank you. Um,
Right.
so like I said, I didn't have any skills as an entrepreneur. The skills that I had was I'm resourceful. And I've always been resourceful since I was a little girl. Like um and so I was living off of my credit cards, when my daughter was first born, put myself into a lot of debt because I was betting on myself. I was taking a risk on myself. So not only was I, living off the credit cards to survive with diapers, I was living off the credit cards, to get my business license and, and all the website and all the rest of the stuff that I needed. Um, and so a lot of it is my initial comment, like I just always know that I'm going to be good no matter what I'm going through. And so I hold on to that with everything that I have because it's always played out that way. And so the business part of it, I started studying on my own. I'm really good at teaching myself stuff. So, there's a lot of trial and error. Um, I'm a creative. And so I knew that I could put on events. I knew like there were ways that I could kind of bring in some income that weren't necessarily heavy lifts for me mentally because I am a creative. And so one of the first things that I did in 2000, so Hue Society was officially established. I started working on it in 2016. It was officially established in 2017. And that next year in July was my first major event. It was at Essence, and I put on a festival. It's like, all right, well, here we are.
Here you go.
But I saw a void, and there were not any wine events for Black women at Essence. And I'm just like, this is the largest collection of Black women in the country, like that we all try. You talking about 500,000 women, and there's no wine education, there's no wine footprint, there's no whatever. So I started my festival. And at the time it was called the Black Wine Experience. So I brought in all Black wines. I got this little space, and I had a friend of mine who shall remain nameless, but he helped me a lot, not like a romantic kind of situation, but he believed in what I was doing. And so he lent me some money to like help because Essence is incredibly expensive. So he lent me some money to offset some of the costs of what I needed to handle there. And from there, I had a little launching pad. And so I understood a lot of stuff that I was doing was virtual, but I was still able to build. And from that festival, then I could do smaller dinners. I could do smaller events here and there. I didn't open the chapters for membership until 2020. By then, I had done 2 or 3 festivals. And so I already had reputation. People already knew who I was. People knew what the Hue Society was. People were, very much engaged in it. I had a huge following. Um, and on the side, I was doing tastings and
Oh,
stuff like that to sustain myself, to pay my rent and all the rest of that stuff. Um, so I started, when I opened up the chapters, I opened up a membership business model. And so that was, kind of filtering in some income as well. And and then we do the events and and I still do. So now I've kind of graduated from doing tastings to speaking engagements and hosting and panels and all the rest of that stuff. But what I will say is like the universe has always opened up for me to have opportunities to do things, right? I've never like sat and like something hasn't come to me. And the more authentic I became, the more opportunities were flowing to me just with ease. And, I'm very big on affirmations and, what I speak and all the rest of that stuff. And I do think that has a part of it. I fully believe that what you speak and, these universal laws, the law of expectation. I fully believe that I'm going to be successful. I'm going to, if it's on my heart, then it was put there for a reason. And if I'm able to transmute that into the world the way, in an authentic way, then I'll be given the resources that I need to move forward as an entrepreneur. And regardless of what that is, I have other ventures that I'm about to start, also terrified. Outside of this wine thing, I've done this wine thing. I've built the communities, and a lot of my work has been community centered and for everybody else. And so, now I'm moving into a space where I want to start building for myself and, doing things that I enjoy and kind of also coming out of this little scaredy cat box of like people seeing me. Like it feels like people see me but no one really knows me. No one, you have this persona of me and I never let too much out. And it's not even intentional guarding. It's just I was been so focused on creating resources and access for everybody else and making sure people have paths and, just kind of destroying barriers. That takes a lot out of you. And I feel like I've done that. And, I'll continue to do that. But now, I want to start some other business ventures in which I'm able to do things and try things and kind of like take these leaps into things that terrify me. I want to leap into it and kind of see where it goes because I know on the other side of fear is always, that thing that you need. And so um that's kind of where I am now. I think that I'm a much better entrepreneur. I'm not living off my credit cards anymore. I make good money.
You're
But
doing
it
well.
took me
Well, and the
years
firm is
to do
doing
that,
well.
right? Like I had to build my value like to the point where and the thing is I still don't make a ton of money off of like the Hue Society, quote unquote, as a business model with the membership and all of that stuff. Um, but I make money as me,
Right, you're earning your
and I
kill.
filter it back into the Hue Society is basically what's happening.
Right.
So
No, you're earning your kill, and I think most people think, oh, the moment you become an entrepreneur successful, you're like raking in millions. It's like no, but I love what I'm doing, and so that's
yeah,
kind of
yeah, it's
in a
not
way
bad at all.
manifesting itself and keep coming back to me in a way.
Yeah.
We talked to many individuals who are using their craft to enhance themselves or to sort of build the community. There's especially with your sort of mastery in wine and community, but then also having to merge it with sort of the corporate relationships. How do you sort of balance making sure that, the deal isn't so lopsided? Like the value transfer is a little bit even, and or the cash transfer is also even because it
Yeah,
happens to a lot of travelers too, influencers.
yeah, I had to learn what my value was. A lot of times, for a long time, I was just taking what people would give me because I needed it. Like I was in a space where I needed, you know, I needed to be able to leverage it. And there's an art to that too, right? Like, no, you may not be getting paid. If you say my fee is $5,000 and they may not be able to pay you $5,000 or that may be out of their budget, but you can figure out like you have to think through it fully. And I think people rush into things, but you have to think through it. Okay, I can't get the $5,000, but what kind of value can I get from this that is going to eventually lead me to that money that I need? And so I start asking people immediately, what's the value exchange? Like, okay, this is my rate. You don't or can't pay me my rate. So what other value exchange can you offer me? Can you make sure that you post my video to your followers, send it across your networks, send it to your listserv? Um, can you get me tickets to this? I'm going to hold this as a favor for later, right? Can you send me some wine for my festival? Pull in a thing here. Like it, I think I've gotten out of the space of just like monetary value because that's one way. When you think about like getting things that you need. It's really about leveraging relationships. And the one thing about my journey is that freedom, I've always held on to it. So nobody owns me.
Mhm.
And that's a very like scary thing for people in the wine industry. You have this Black woman who's very powerful and no one owns her. There's no space in which you could be like, oh, you're tied to this, so you can't do this. Or you can only do this, and these people, you can't work with these people because blah blah. Like I've always made it very clear, like I built myself, I built my career, I built all of these things practically on my own. No one owns that. No one can be like, you can't say that, you gotta behave this way. None of that. And that's very dangerous for people because they're like, well, what's she gonna say? Or what's she gonna do? Um, but also that gives me a leverage of being able to walk into any room and you know exactly what you're getting. Like you know exactly who I am, you know exactly how I move, you know that if I can't bring other people with me, then we're probably not going to do the deal. And so I think there's also something to be said about reputation, right? People approach you the way that they hear that you move, right? And so people know not to approach me in a certain way or with certain things. So yeah, I that means that I'm sacrificing a lot, right? A lot of money sometimes, um, a lot of quote unquote opportunities, but in my head, those opportunities weren't for me because if they require that I'm something other than myself, or I have to reduce my ethos or my
Mm.
work, then this is not for me. And so I've learned to, um, one, that, your reputation does precede you. And when people are playing in your face, you got to figure out why they're playing in your face. Right. You got to think about why do you feel like they could approach me this way? Why do you feel like you could throw this at me and I'm gonna be okay with it? Or why do you feel like, because you've done it in the past. You've accepted this in the past. And people are scared to stop accepting what doesn't serve them in order so that they can move into a path where the things that they do that do serve them can start coming their way. You're going to keep getting nonsense until kind of create a barrier, um why did I lose my train of thought? A boundary. I'm trying to say boundary. You know, so I think that my boundaries are really firm, and I've learned to look at situations on how to get a value exchange, which is more important than a money exchange. Like that's how you kind of climb ladders and you have relationships. I just went to Italy and I took 10 people with me and we were able to get these luxury dinners and all the rest of this stuff without spending a dime because that's a value exchange, right? Because people want to be in proximity to me because they want to be in proximity to my work because they believe in that, right? It's speaking to them in an authentic way. And so the value exchange is, yes, we're going to partner, we're going to work together. I might not be paying you for these dinners, but we'll do some work later on, or I'm going to post you on a page, or something somewhere, because it's really, at the end of the day, it's all really about proximity though, right? That's
Yeah.
why influencers are influencers,
Yeah.
because they want proximity to the people who follow you or
Network.
whatever. You got to learn how to leverage that outside of just like finances.
Yeah, very true. So basically, you growing out of being so tied to sort of a monetary sort of form of a monetary sort of benefit to now sort of a value benefit and also like an increase in the network and everything.
Yeah.
Sounds
But you have to know your value, right?
yeah.
Like I know every time somebody approaches me, I look at it and I'm like, okay, if you are able to say that we partnered on this, now that adds value to you, well, sometimes well more than it will add value to me because I'm validating you, right? Because my work is pure. This
Yeah,
validates you, especially in the wine industry.
very
If
much.
you're able to say, oh, the Hue Society, blah, 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 I am well aware that that validates you.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm not afraid to say that. Like, I know that it's validating you. And I get to choose whether or not I want to validate this situation.
there you're preaching on it. Yeah,
And I think it's the same thing with Black people. If we realize our value, they're approaching you. They already did their research. They're watching. They've seen, and they have tied this in somehow to some kind of value for themselves. And you have to figure out what that value is
Hmm.
and what that means to you. And if you want to go into that, right? Because at the end of the day, it's still going to be it's proximity and validation,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what it is, especially with influencers. And so as Black people, I would love for us to kind of take a step back and look at that. Like, there's this thing where they say if they approach you and offer you $2 million, you're probably worth 10,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I
right?
know
That's
that.
how I look at it. I'm like, all right, it might not be 10 money changing, but your views and your likes are going to go up. Then you're going to have Black people on your side because you look like you're doing the work. You look like you're all engaged in the community. You got to know your value. You got to look at it from just outside of the box of here's money. They're handing you money. You're worth more than that. You worth something to them that is much more than money. And that value for them is going to be way more than it is for you a lot of times if you're just accepting money.
That's very true. No, yes, that backdoor pay, there's always something in the front that you're missing out on. Yep, 100% agree to that. And understanding your value. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the Hue Society is more than just sort of a community of people who enjoy wine, of Black people enjoying wine. It's also like an education, right? So as
Mm-hmm.
I'm still, this is like kind of me wanting to jump into a little bit of this, but
Mm-hmm.
I've always wondered, because I travel to South Africa a lot, and you can like wine, but there aren't many Black people who own their own vineyards who are actually able to produce their own wine and actually extract way more value than any other demographic on this planet. Is there any way to increase that? Is there any way for the Hue Society, or do you see a pathway to get more people of color, more Black people into not only enjoying the wine and of course, to a certain extent, making some wine, but owning their own vineyard in that plot of land?
Yeah, so my friend Paul is the only Black landowner in South Africa. When I went over there, I took my daughter there, I think it was 2 years ago now. And a lot of people, to your point, don't know that, right? When people think about South African wine, for example, you think that you're supporting Black people because it's Africa, and you're not. It's a very, very small percentage, which is why I went over there. And, I had a lot of meetings with the stakeholders and decision makers and stuff like that, because I'm trying to figure out, apartheid did its thing.
Yeah.
And because of apartheid, all of that land belongs to white people. And the workers of that land, the farmers, are Black. And so Paul was able to make enough money to buy, the farm, um, and plant his own land. But I think it's one of those things again where we don't see it.
Mhm.
Like you never saw a Black Psalm before, so didn't know you could be a Black Psalm. Like the land ownership is so important, but it's such a racial game. Even in the US, you know, maybe 3% of loan approvals get go through, right, for us. And so it's a very low space, especially for the wine industry. And the wine industry is very you have to have money, right? It's very generational. The
Yeah.
land is passed down and passed down and passed down. So when you do get some, but it's hard to get. But you also have to have enough discretionary income to hold on for at least 5 years. You're not going to make anything off of that wine for at least 5 years. You have to be able to sustain yourself all of that time. We are never really set up like that. Like that's generational stuff. We're not set up in a space where we can kind of have this on the side and be growing it and still survive in a lot of ways. And it takes a long time, and it's hard to be in the wine industry. It's a lot depending on what method you go through. So getting land is there's very few, not even just in South Africa, but in even in the US, there are lots of wine brands.
Yeah.
But to your point, as far as like owning the land, very, very, very few. And a good portion of that is because it's incredibly expensive and we don't get the loans for it. And but but wine is an agricultural product. So when you think about that, you have to think about Black farmers and what they're going through literally right now. There's no difference. It's the same exact thing because it is a farm basically, right? That's what you're getting. You're planting grapes. And there are other things that are planted on the farms as well. But how many Black farmers do you know? And when you think about those stories, when those Black farmers, there's this funny it's not even on TikTok, it's on Instagram, um, of this Black farmer who owns his land. And he's like, of course I'm a Black farmer. I'm a Black farmer. Of course I send my white workers to the bank to get such and such and such and such, right? Like it's the name of the game. That's in America. We all know what the Black experience is in America with getting loans and redlining and all these other historical things. All of that stuff has played a part in our ownership of land. And wine is just a subset of that because farming is a subset of it.
I understand.
Considering what we came over here doing, you think it would be a
Right.
little easier. But they never gave us our 40 acres and a mule. It was a lie. And I feel like we're still, there's like a part of us that's still chasing that dream and waiting for that to happen, as if they're going to do right by it. And then there's a part of us that are actively fighting for it. And a part of that fight, though, when you ask like what about the Hue Society and being able to um help kind of change the trajectory of that, it is psychological.
Uh,
Big part of that fight is psychological, is believing that you can. It is feeling safe enough to want to explore that space. And so I've seen the effects of community and we need community now more than ever, but I've seen, you know, we've had members come in that were just kind of like testing the waters, like, oh, I like wine. I don't know. I'm really interested in it. Go from that, not really knowing anything about wine, to becoming Italian wine experts, right? And now you take it every time you take it a step further. And who knows, maybe she will go and get some land in Italy, and own that. But it's psychological first. You have to feel safe enough to even explore the idea of even tapping your feet, getting your feet wet, tapping into it a little bit. And then you're like, oh, if I can do this, and I know I can do this. And then you just keep going and your passion grows as your safety grows.
so it's a gradual as the education, as the knowledge, as sort of the acceptance comes along. Eventually, there could be that inspiration for that person to actually purchase that plot of land,
Yeah.
get those 5 years going, and then it'll multiply. But it's kind of like our own renaissance is occurring.
I believe that. And I think that, the closer we get to group economics and we start practicing that, um, the more fulfilled we will be in creating and buying these spaces and all of that stuff. I think a part of it is the government. You're fighting against the government. It's not like sometimes you're not even fighting against your will. You're fighting against the government.
Yeah.
And you got to play those games. And it's like we're surviving every day. You worried about surviving versus for farmers, I think it's a little bit different. And I don't mean farmers in a way of like wine farmers. I mean just like for farmers, it's different because this is their livelihood. So if you don't think about wine as your livelihood, a lot of time it's a second job or you're working for somebody else. It's not your livelihood though. So if you were a farmer and you decided to plant grapes, that's different, right? Because that's a part of your livelihood. But to actively, this is your job, this is what you're going to go and do. To start out like that, most people don't think about wine that way, in the sense of like, I'm going to make this my livelihood to own land and, create and grow and till and all of that stuff. It's different. It's like I said, it's psychological.
I see what you're saying. No, and you explained it very well, and yeah, I guess I hope that it that influence actually does come to fruition.
I believe it will. I fully believe that it will. I think the um, the more we're together, the more we band together, the more powerful, obviously, the more powerful we become. We know what we can do when we're together. It's just thought processes. Like oh, actually, I can do this. Or actually, this might be a good idea, but you don't see the long-term goal of it. You don't see, um, you haven't seen the long-term outcome of what owning a piece of land. And because even when you own it, right, there's still the difficulties and the challenges that you have to deal with that nobody else has to deal with. And it's just like, again, it's a psychological thing. Do I even want to put up with this?
Right,
And
right.
I don't know what the outcome is going to be.
What is next for the Hue Society as it expands, as you're are you looking for more locations, or is it sort of connecting your other ventures to it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the sixth year of my festival, which is now called the Wine and Culture Festival. And my goal is to make this, the wine festival, right? It's in July this year. We've moved it to DC out of Atlanta.
Ooh.
Um, and hopefully you'll come, but uh,
Hoping.
um, I would love to be able to bounce that around
Yeah.
different places and not even just in this country. Like I would love to take the Wine and Culture Festival to Africa or, some other places. And yeah, fully plan on opening, new chapters and like Paris. And, I've had people reach out to me in Brazil and, I have people reaching out to me all over the world, asking to help them build these communities.
Yeah.
Um, and so, kind of tapping into that. And we actually got an app coming out this summer. It's called
Oh,
Wine-ish,
there we
the
go.
best kept secret. But so, I've been working on this app for 4 years and it's finally almost done. The plan is to launch it this summer. And it's incredible. It's a community app, it's a wine app, it's like a social media app for wine. And so you can go in there, you can create your groups, you can do instant messaging, you can you'll get push notifications on pronunciations. um you got pairings, you got restaurants, you have events, it's incredible. And I can't believe this came out of my brain. Like, I really can't. And I can't believe nobody's thought to do it. Like that was the part that I was like, okay, I've been working on this for 4 years and no one still has come out with, because most wine apps are about ratings or
Yeah, exactly.
group, storage or pairings and all the rest of that stuff. No, this is like a legit almost social media app and it's dope as hell. And I think the thing that I'm the most proud of and the dopest part of it is everybody will be able to see themselves. It's not Eurocentric language. And that's always been my issue with the wine industry. Like language is important, and we have this superiority of language in which we use all the time to the point where we be lying, literally lying about what you taste and smell. Like somebody said that to you, you're repeating it, right? We didn't all grow up the same way. We didn't grow up with the same fruits, especially if you like not from this country. And so the app is going to explore that. What does it look like to be somebody who grew up in the Caribbean and see your fruits so that when you're smelling wine or tasting wine, you can identify that. That doesn't exist. What
Right.
does it look like to be from the Philippines and see the fruits and vegetables that you grew up with? So when you're, tasting wine, you're able to describe it that way. But it's a cross-cultural education because it's going to be there for everybody. Everybody gets to see it. And now you're in these groups. I love Pinot Noir group. And this person is from this place and they're saying, this is what I smell, right? And this is what I smell. This is what I grew up with. And this is, all these other different things. And it's not the same language. It's not, oh, I smell kumquats. It's like, have you ever seen a kumquat? If I put a kumquat in front of you right now, you're going to tell me that. And if I put a kumquat and a mandarin in front of you right now, you're
Like
going to tell
what?
me what's the different smells of them. Like, you know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So I really wanted to tackle all the things that make people anxious, that create anxiety, in the wine space and kind of like bring them down to a human level of understanding and appreciation and also appreciating everybody's culture. Like, no, I'm not going to be able to tackle every single language in every single place. But overall, I've been very intentional about making sure that people are represented And there's also the opportunity to kind of add your own words into the vocabulary. And so I think the educational piece of it, the social education is I'm so proud of that. And I'm so, because even on these exams, the certification exams, it's all Eurocentric language. And if you don't learn it that way, you're going to fail.
I see. Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
trying to change trying to normalize language is so important. Like, and so I'm really excited about this. I hope it goes well. I
It
know
will.
it will go well,
It will
but
go. It will go well.
I
We're
know it
all
will go
excited.
well.
I can't wait. If you can add a and I know I'm in New York, so I have the benefit of a lot, you travel a lot, you taste a lot of wines. I can always pick them up in New York. A lot of, I guess places have it. But
Mhm.
if you can also add where to buy certain wines. Let's say there is a wine you like, you got from Italy or France, and
Mhm.
see if it's at your local wine gallery or store would be nice because sometimes you just can't find it. It's just like,
Well, that's why we have threads and focus. You can make comments and
yeah.
chats,
Oh, see,
and
there you
you
go.
can create like whole groups and like chat threads and stuff like that. Like it's so social and everybody gets to get in there. Like, to your point, if you saw this wine and you had this wine in Italy, you coming back and you're just like, yo, I got this wine, blah, blah, blah. Does anybody know where I can get it in the US?
Yeah, perfect.
Because it would be impossible to try and archive every single wine, that people have. But it's not impossible to communicate. And as a group, let's go half on this case. Like, this wine just came out. Let's go half on this case of wine together. And boom, boom, boom. Or where did you find that wine? Oh, it's at Happy Cork in New York.
Yeah.
Cool. Now you have all the information that you need. It is a way to get information, though, and I think that that's beautiful. And we get to share and explore, the journey together in a safe, affirming environment.
Do you also plan to expand like the wine tourism within the Hue side, like maybe taking, group
Yeah. So we did the
trips?
Italy trip. I think as we go and open the different chapters in different countries, we'll definitely, create those events there. But I do want to start doing like an annual trip and, maybe even like a cruise kind of situation. Private cruises, we fly into Macedonia and, I want to do geeky stuff too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's like they're all on the edge. It's
Right,
perfect.
but then you go, you kind of hop on a boat from there and go around, and, and come back and you fly home. I love creating experiences and events and all that stuff and connecting people and just, having people tap into their joy and be unapologetic about it and not have to worry about what somebody else thinks while you're doing it.
Okay, beautiful. Look, I know you have a busy, busy day ahead and much more in the month. We're already over, but we typically ask these pay me in plane ticket quirky questions to kind of see where you land on the
Okay,
on the travel spectrum here. So let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready, I think.
So if you had to be paid in plane tickets, which airline are you choosing?
Oh, Delta, I'm trying to keep my damn status at this point. They get on my nerves.
Yeah, yeah, you're in Atlanta, so that actually makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I want my status. Like they making it real hard this year. I'm getting kind of tight.
Yep, yeah. The big news was Delta made a lot of changes to maintaining status and even earning it. So
Yeah. Well, we know what that's about.
yeah. When you do travel, is it a hotel or a Airbnb?
Oh, hotel for sure. Because also a lot of times I travel by myself, so it's a safety thing for me.
Okay, fair enough. When you do travel, do you have a particular credit card or debit card you're using for your points and miles?
No, actually, I don't.
Yeah.
I need to, well, American Express won't accept me, so if they would give me a pass, then I would use that because it's actually really beneficial. But no, I don't.
Yeah, honestly, most people don't use it. The marketing makes it seem like everybody does, but no.
Oh no, I would use the crap out of that. I'll be using them flight points for sure.
Cash is a good way to go though, or debit card, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Uh, we talked about all the good things about travel, especially within wine and how connective it is. But do you have any travel pet peeves?
Outside of like people standing up as soon as the plane lands, that drives me crazy. That where are you going? Like, unless you have an emergency, like, and you're behind trying to catch your connecting flight, or you gotta use the bathroom, where are you going? Like, and then you come and stand next to me because I haven't stood up, and it's just like, that's one thing. And the other thing is like, I think people make assumptions about you when you come into a space. And sometimes you can see like the microaggressions of how they treated you versus how they treated the non-Black person next to you. And I pick up on that immediately. And I'm just like, oh, okay.
Hmm.
That's a huge pet peeve of mine. I actually was going to start like a travel blog about it, like the different places that I go and they don't know necessarily who I am or, if I'm a VIP or blah, 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 blah. And like just not even announcing it, just seeing how people treat you when they don't think you are a VIP or you have money or they don't know why you're there. A lot of times I know the owner of the hotel or something like that, and then they'll see me strolling by with them and they're just like, I'm like, yeah, but you should treat everybody right with respect. Or people also think that Black people don't tip, so they start treating you different based off of that too. I can't stand it.
Yeah, yeah, like the Keith Lee of wine.
I listen, I should do that. I really should. I thought about, but I put a business plan together for it. Maybe one day soon.
All right, there's an idea. When you do travel, is it a carry-on or check bag?
Oh, um I hate having bags. I'm checking it. I don't care. I'm check everything getting checked. I don't want nothing in my hands. I want to float through the airport like a princess. I don't. And I know it's like I have friends who are like, I'm carrying, they will get a week's full of clothes in a carry-on. I could never. I could never. I'd be struggling. So sometimes if it's like if I have a really tight turnaround and I have to land, then I'll do a carry-on, like if it's just like a quick in and out. But no, I'm checking. I'll check the carry-on. I check everything. I'd be happy with gate checks. Like, oh, is everybody here you go.
Take it. All right. I'm team carry-on, but you are clearly team check
Yeah.
bag.
Mm-mm.
When you do fly, is it a window, aisle, or middle seat?
I'm definitely a window.
Okay, the dreamer, as they said.
Yeah. Yeah. I like looking out the window or mostly my head on the thing. But I travel with my daughter and she always commandeers the window. So
Oh, so you're
even though I
stuck.
don't like it, technically I'm a middle seat.
Yeah, I was about to say you're stuck with the middle seat.
Yeah.
If you had to travel to one location for the rest of your life, where would it be and why? And there's a cop out because most people struggle with this one. So I'll let you struggle for a bit and then.
Oh yeah. I don't know. There was a time when I would have said Mexico. I love Mexico. I used to go to Mexico like once a year. I still love Mexico. It's probably it. But Italy has come up on the forefront a little bit. So, outside of like the racism there, it's pretty cool. Uh, and I love it because you could just bounce around the countries very easily.
Yeah.
You just hopping on a train, like I can go have lunch in another city, like very easily. Um, and then, be back home by dinner. Or I love the options, the freedom of it. Like you could really and it doesn't, it's like $10.
Yeah.
Like
It's
the
very,
trains, it's amazing. I'm like in love with that system. And I love Italian food. I love pasta. And I love that you can walk everywhere. So it's like not this,
hmm.
it's not this and the portions are smaller. Like, yeah, Italy was it for me. I really loved being there. I love that space. But I don't know, Mexico, it's between Italy and Mexico. Mexico has
Oh,
my heart.
yeah, they're too different. Like which part, I guess you love all of Italy or like a certain, is it the South? Maybe like
Well, I
Sardinia?
haven't been to the South yet, but
So
I heard the South was even better.
yeah,
So
I've heard it's great. I've heard it's great.
yeah, like I've only been to the North. But I was trying to get back to Italy this year. I just got back like 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to get back by the end of this year. Like legit, I'm trying to figure out somebody will fly me over there if I can pull out a business deal somewhere and get some, have to go on one of these wine trips or something. But I'm trying to get back over there. Like if you listening to this and you need somebody to go to Italy, I'm here for you.
All right, and the last question is, where's your next trip? Your next flight?
Actually, next week I have to go to New York for Mary J. Blige. So
All right, come up here to the city. It's a good life.
yep, I'll be in New York.
Beautiful. That is all. Thank you for your time, Tahirah. This was the wonderful. I almost forgot about everybody else who's listening. I'm like, this is just for me. I need to know about this fine life. I'm still trying to get into it. I got a trailblazer in here. I gotta know.
Oh, shit. That's
How do you
funny.
buy the land?
How do you get to the land? I think group economics. I think we should put a plan together.
Seriously.
All right, thank you. This was wonderful. It was really great chatting with you. Glad you reached out, and yeah, we'll chat a little bit later. I'm starting a podcast on my own.
Hey, okay.
It's called Assimilation Not Required.
I'll always return the favor, and I'll definitely shout it out whenever you release it. And I'm going to also release the notes of whenever the app drops, so that you have some going there. I'm excited.
Okay.
All right.
All right.